Okay, so for number 6, it says Rebecca is making a patchwork quilt, and I'll just make that a little bit bigger. She has chosen a simple design called a basic 4-patch block. So here's the basic 4-patch block that you see there. Each finished 4-patch block is to be 1 foot by 1 foot. Okay, so 1 foot there, and 1 foot here. Okay. So A says, what scale has been used to draw the diagram? Okay, so this is 1 foot in real life, but what scale has been used to draw this diagram? So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get a ruler out, and you're going to need to actually measure that. So if you measure it in centimeters, you have to convert centimeters to inches, and then the feet to inches, and then so you have the same units. Okay? So get your ruler out. If you don't have a ruler, you can come up quickly and borrow one of mine, and then we'll measure these up. Coming up with there. So again, we're measuring the whole thing here, not just one block, but the whole square. You got 5.9 centimeters?
5.2.
You got 5.2?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big difference. What do you guys get? Yeah. You got 4.9?
Yeah.
Well, we're all over the board here.
Wait, 4.9? I got that too. Let me check. 4.9 millimeters?
No, not 4.9 millimeters. 4.9 centimeters, maybe.
10 millimeters is 1.
Okay, guys. So it's the actual measurement is 4.9 centimeters. So let's keep going here. 4.9 centimeters. 4.9 centimeters relates to 1 foot, right? That's the relationship there. But we need these if we're talking about what scale, right? We need to get these both in the same units, and we need to have like a 1 to something or a something to 1. So 4.9 centimeters. Let's change both of these to inches. Okay, inches and inches. So how do I get centimeters to inches? What's the conversion factor there? What's the number we multiply by? Or divide by? What's the number? What's the relationship between centimeters and inches? You guys should know this. We've used this quite a few times. Anybody remember? Okay, look on your rulers, because most of your rulers have inches and centimeters. So how long is 1 centimeter, or 1 inch in centimeters?
3.
Not 3.
10. What?
Not 10. Okay, 2.35 is closer.
2.34.
It's 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch, okay? So if we've got 4.9 centimeters, what we do is we divide by 2.54 centimeters per inch. So what is 4.9 divided by 2.54? Somebody do that on your calculator.
It's 1.92.
1 point, sorry? 1.929?
Yeah, 1.93.
So 1.93. Okay. Did you guys get that as well? No? Anybody else get that? Yeah. Let's everybody do the calculations just so we can confirm, right? Because we had to do a few measurements before we got the right one, right? So let's do all the calculations together, and then if 2 or 3 of you get the same number, that's probably the right one. So did anybody else get this number? Yes? Yeah? Yes? Okay. 1.93. All right, and we know that 1 foot has 12 inches. Okay? So we're getting close. How do I get this to 1 to something? How do I...
So want to, divide by it?
I want to divide it by something. Yeah, I want to divide both numbers by what? How do I get a 1 on this side? What would I divide this side by to get 1?
By itself.
Yeah, by itself. So you divide by 1.93. And what is 12 divided by 1.93?
1.
It's not 1, no.
No, I don't know.
1.93 divided by 1.93 is 1, so that's where we get this one. What's 12 divided by 1.93? So just so we have both calculations up here, I'll just clear the screen. I'll put everything up here that we've done so far. So 4.9 divided by 2.54 is 1.93. 12 divided by 1.93, and that would be 1.39, 1, 3, 3, is 6.18 or 6.2. Did you guys get that?
I got 6.2.
Okay, so 6.2. So the scale is 1 to 6.2. So if this was 1 inch, the real one would be 6.2 inches. If this diagram is 1.93 inches, then the real one is 12 inches. So that's the scale. Oops. That's a little bit too much. I didn't want to do that. So is everyone okay with that? 1 to 6.2? Do you understand that process there? How we got that? Okay, so with scale, you got to get to the same units. All right. Okay, Rebecca cut out squares that are 6 inches by 6 inches. Will her pieces form the quilt she planned? Why or why not? Okay. So 6 inches by 6 inches. So that is the so the finished 4-patch block is 1 foot by 1 foot. So she cut out squares that are 6 inches by 6 inches. So each one of these squares would be 6 inches by 6 inches. Is that going to get her the quilt that she planned? Why or why not? All right, so the 1.93 is just the diagram, right? So if we're talking about the whole big quilt, right? And so she's got a block that's 1 foot by 1 foot made of 4 squares. So can she take little squares of 6 inches by 6 inches? And will that make her quilt that has a patch of 12 by 12?
Yeah.
So what you're thinking about is if this has to be the real quilt block has to be 12 inches from here to here, the question is will 6-inch little quilt blocks, will that make, can you put 4 of them together to make this exactly? Okay. So here's the thing. If you said yes, then I understand why you said yes, because if this was 6 and then this was another 6, 6 and 6 adds up to 12. The only thing is this is a real-life contextual problem, or just a real-life problem that you have to think about maybe some other factors. For example, how are you going to get those pieces to stay together? What do you have to do to get those pieces to stay together?
Glue.
Not glue. Yeah, stitch them together. So you actually have to sew them together. So here, envision this. If you had a block that was exactly 6 inches by exactly 6 inches, how are you going to get those together? If you sew something, you're going to have to overlap them somehow, or kind of fold in the ends like this, right? And then sew them underneath. So the actual answer for this is it seems like you could, but the overall size of the quilt, each of these 4 pattern blocks is going to be a little bit less than 12 inches because you have to allow for the seam. Okay, on all of your clothes, jeans, shirts, everything, there's a seam where 2 pieces come together and they have to, it's kind of like this, right? So when they come up, when they butt up against each other, you need a little piece down here where you can sew them right here. You have to sew them together. Okay? And that's the seam allowance. So they have to be a little bit, so this is what you're writing down. I'm not writing this down. This is what you're writing down. If Rebecca uses the 6-inch by 6-inch squares, okay, she can make a quilt, but the blocks will be slightly less than 12 inches because you have to overlap the blocks to sew them together. So that's what you're writing down. Doesn't have to be word for word, but if you understand what I've said, you can write that down in your own words. All right, so let's finish up. Number 6 here. If the seam allowance, so if we're talking about sewing anything or making quilts or something like that, there's a seam allowance, which means you have to add a little extra so that you can overlap and sew that up. So if the seam allowance is to be 3/8 of an inch, what size must she cut each block? Okay. So think about, so these are the little squares, each block, okay. So each of these, I think we're talking about these big blocks. So she says block here, and she's talking about squares that make up the block, right? So a 4-pattern block. Okay. So basically, in order to make this exactly 12 inches on the quilt, then she's going to need an extra 3/8 of an inch on the top and 3/8 of an inch on the bottom. And 3/8 of an inch here and 3/8 of an inch here. Yeah, each individual block will have an extra 3/8 of an inch, right? For sure. Sorry, each individual square. But I think they're talking about the overall block. That's what they're saying. So this right here, let me just redraw this for you. And you should maybe do this too. But if you have this block, right, you need 3/8 of an inch more on every side to make sure that you have something to sew to the next piece that lines up with it. So if something is normally, if this block has to be 12 inches exactly, she needs 3/8 on one side and 3/8 on the other. So 12 inches plus 3/8 of an inch plus another 3/8 of an inch.
Okay. So we add the 3 of an inch twice.
That's right. Alright. So you could probably do that on your calculator with your fraction button. Do you guys know how to use your fraction buttons there? 3/8. And it'll give you a fraction as an answer. You should have something like A/B or something. You can do that. So you have something like this on your calculator, 12 3/4 of an inch. Or 12.75 inches. Okay? So again, that's kind of the actual size that each block needs to be, so that you have enough of a seam on each side so that you can sew the blocks together. Okay? Does that make sense? So you got to think about a little bit of that too. And that's the same for carpentry, construction as well. You got to kind of think about those extras, the width of the boards and stuff like that, and you got to think all that through when you put stuff together, just like quilting or sewing. Okay, so that's number 6. Hopefully you understand that. That's a bit of some application question there. So now where we are is we are at number 7. And then after number 7, there's the practice your skills. So for the rest of this class, you are to finish all of 1 to 7. If you haven't done up to 6 yet, you should have that done. So you should right now be doing number 7. And this talks about the component parts of this table with measurements. Okay, so you actually need to draw this to scale. So what that means is you need to pick a scale where you can actually, with your ruler now, measure the exact length. Okay, and draw it to that exact length on your paper. So for example, this tabletop, and I'll give you a start on this one. This tabletop is a rectangle that in the diagram is 90 by 150. So what do you think would be an appropriate scale for you to actually draw it on your paper? So could you do 9 centimeters by 15 centimeters? Right? Do a 1 to 10 ratio. If that fits on your paper, great. If it doesn't, you might have to choose a different scale. So instead of 1 to 10, then you might have to go 1 to what? Do we move this number up or down? 1 to 20? Okay, let's see. Would that work? So then you need to divide each of these numbers by 20. So what would this be? What would 90 divided by 20 be? And what would 150 divided by 20 be?
90 divided by 20 is 4.5, or 150.
So 4.5. So would that be a reasonable to draw on your paper there? And then this one would be what? 7.5 centimeters. Does that look good? Would you be able to fit that on your paper?
Yeah.
Okay, test that out. If that's still too big, you're going to have to go a number up a little bit higher, like maybe 25. But just check that out. And then so do that to draw the component diagrams to scale. The component parts to scale. So you have to draw them exactly the right size to scale. And then the rest of the class, you can work on the review, which is the practice your new skills starting on the same page.